Hi, I'm Caitlin, and I read Bottoms Up and the Devil Laughs by Carrie Howley. So, the overall book was about individuals who risked essentially everything to expose their experience on The Secret and expose a government or other powerful institutions. The book was broken up by each experience as a different chapter, which I liked. It made it very easy to follow, and she used individual experiences to come to a general conclusion about the consequences that these people faced and compared each chapter to make a whole general conclusion and general takeaway from the book. So more specifically, one person that stuck out to me was Reality Winner. Yes, that's her real name. She was in the military and a former intelligence specialist who leaked a classified NSA document that showed Russian interference with the 2016 US election. This chapter got in depth what her motivations were, the consequences she faced, and the legal repercussions that followed along with that. So this story just shows how the book ties in broader issues of government secrecy and what happens to people who break the silence. And I like how it got a very specific, in-depth example so you can really compare it to real life instead of just being like, oh, this happened to this person. No, it was a full in-depth story, which I really liked. Another good portion of the book was about how journalists and news anchors have to carefully bring light to these heavy situations and how they have to be extremely careful with how they word things, and they're trained to navigate not only the complexity of each issue but the impact that they have on the public's opinions and policies. Because if someone hears about this topic for the first time on the news and the news anchor, you can tell they're have an opinion about one side, then the person hearing about this story for the same time is probably going to agree with the news anchor and have the same opinions even if they don't know the whole information. So they just have to word things very carefully, and it's just something I never thought about, but I read it and I was like, that makes sense. So overall, this book shows the fine line between national security and the public's right to know specific information and what our rights are, because I feel like it's not talked about a lot, where that line is. And even this book is basically saying where is the line, and also dealing with the consequences they faced. So some things I really admired is going back. I like how the book was broken up by character, so it was easy to follow. And I also liked how the specific people were portrayed and humanized instead of being looked at as rule breakers or resisting preset rules. And I also think that she tied in individual stories to the book as a whole seamlessly instead of being this happened this chapter, this happened this chapter, and then just she combined it really well. But I also had some critiques. So it starts very abrupt, and I feel like I needed a better introduction to know what this book was going to be about, because I read the first couple pages and then I had to go back and be like, what just happened? What is this book about? I feel like I genuinely did not understand any of it, which never happens. That's the first time I had to go back in a book and actually be like, what? So I feel like a better introduction would have set me up better to really understand this book. And also, it covers a ton of ground with different heavy topics, and I feel like the same point would have gotten across if she cut back a little and focused on one big issue instead of a ton of different ones, because just heavy topic after heavy topic and then different stories with each one was a lot, and it was kind of overwhelming at sometimes. But other than that, I enjoyed reading this book, and it definitely put light on topics I wouldn't have known without reading this. It's just stuff that I would have never thought about, but once I read it, I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I would recommend reading this book, and I learned a lot.